Picture this: Sarajevo, 1993. You're standing in what used to be a middle-class neighbourhood, and your neighbour, a banker before the war, is offering you a gold necklace. Not for food, not for medicine. For a pack of cigarettes and 3 Bic lighters. He's desperate. The necklace is real gold, probably worth 2 months' salary in the old world. But in a city under siege, with no electricity, no running water, no food distribution, that gold is just shiny metal. The lighters, those are survival. Fire for cooking, fire for heat, fire for boiling water so you don't die of dysentery. This isn't fiction. This was documented by a man named Selko Begovic, who survived over a year in that siege. And here's what keeps me up at night. He watched people with gold starve while people with practical skills and tools thrived. The conventional prepper wisdom says stack gold and silver. If you don't hold it, you don't own it. I've said it myself. But when we forensically examine what actually happens during total economic collapse, not theory, documented reality, gold ranks far below something else entirely. Skills, land, tools, community, the Amish Hedge. By the end of this video, you'll understand why a $1,000 investment in the right practical goods and skills will save your family when 10,000 in gold bullion won't. Let me show you the pattern. Because this has happened before, multiple times, in multiple countries, and the data tells the same story every single time. Number 1. Currency collapse happens faster than anyone believes possible. In Bosnia, the transition from a functioning money-based economy to pure barter took months, not years, months. Selko documented how in the early days people still tried using currency. Within weeks, prices multiplied by factors of 20, 30, 100. A pack of cigarettes that cost 1.5 German marks outside the war zone cost 40 marks inside. Venezuela, 2016 to present. Inflation exceeded 1,000,000%. The bolivar became so worthless Venezuelans jokingly called it the bolivar muerto, the dead bolivar. The government's response? They removed high-denomination bills from circulation and gave people 72 hours to exchange currency that was literally being declared illegal. 72 hours, picture that. Your life savings, 3 days to convert before the government declares it worthless paper. Argentina, 1998 to 2002. The economy contracted 28%. More than 50% of the population fell below the poverty line. Those who had denominated their savings in pesos experienced devastating losses. Same pattern, same stages, same outcome. Number 2, when currency fails, economies revert to barter and only utility matters. In Venezuela right now, today, fishermen at a beach resort called Patanimo exchanged their catch for rice, plantains and bananas brought by people walking from nearby towns. One fisherman said it directly. Money doesn't buy anything, so it's better for people to bring food so we can give them fish. Farmers travel hundreds of kilometers to Caracas, carrying 200 bananas, 30 kilos of yams, 30 of cassava, 40 kilos of lemon to exchange for flour, rice or pasta. Not to sell for currency, to exchange directly for other goods. In the coffee-growing regions, hardware stores accept coffee beans as payment. 3 100-kilo sacks of coffee trade for 200 litres of gasoline. Coffee beans have become currency because they're standardised, they're consumable, they have use value. This is economic reversion. Modern collapse sends societies back to pre-industrial barter, and in that environment, gold is useless. You can't eat it. You can't burn it for heat. You can't use it to purify water or treat an infected wound. But the person who can grow food, the person who can repair a water pump, the person who has stockpiled antibiotics and hygiene supplies, that person survives. Number 3. The Great Depression proved land and skills trump everything. Farmers during the Great Depression struggled. Crop prices fell to devastating lows. Some burned corn as fuel because it was cheaper than coal. But farmers with productive land possessed an irreplaceable advantage. They could produce their own food. Documented experiences from rural Iowa show farm families raised large gardens with vegetables, canned fruit from orchards, produced milk and cream from dairy cattle, supplied themselves with meat and eggs from chickens. They bought flour and sugar in 50-pound sacks and baked their own bread. Farm wives made clothing from cloth cut from flour and feed sacks. Zero cash income. Survived anyway. Urban families, destitute. In Dubuque, Iowa, 2,200 workers lost their jobs between 1927 and 1934. Those workers, even if they'd maintained their wages, which dropped 30% nominally, faced hunger because they had no productive capacity. One grandfather commenting on my last video said it perfectly. "My grandfather survived the Great Depression because he had a small 4-acre farm, carpentry, and painting skills. Not gold, not savings, land and skills." Here's the kicker. Victory gardens during World War II proved this principle at scale. More than 20 million gardens were planted in 1943. They produced 10 billion pounds of food. 40% of the entire US vegetable supply came from these gardens, and 2/3 were in towns, cities, and suburban areas. By 1944, more than half of Americans growing gardens reported doing so out of economic need, not patriotic motivation. The mechanism is mathematical. Farmland produces income, crops, rental value, direct food, regardless of economic conditions. The academic data shows farmland increased 17% during the 2008-2009 financial crisis, while the S&P 500 declined 46%. Between 2000 and 2019, the S&P 500 posted negative returns in 28 different quarters. In 26 of those 28 quarters when stocks declined, farmland posted positive returns, not speculation, insurance. Number 4. Skills became survival capital, and the list is specific. The Depression-era survival strategies read like a catalogue of practical production. People caught and sold fish, made homemade fudge, grew and sold berries, started lunch wagons, shoveled snow, made and sold hand-woven baskets, made and sold quilts, mended and altered clothes, washed windows, rendered lard, butchered animals, preserved food by canning. What do you notice? Every item involves creating or processing something of tangible value: food, clothing, shelter-related services. The skills that commanded highest value were those addressing fundamental human needs: food production and preservation, clothing production and repair, shelter improvement, healthcare, and mechanical repair. A person who could slaughter an animal, preserve meat through smoking, or can vegetables possessed income-generating skills no economic collapse could eliminate. Doctors, nurses, dentists remained employed throughout the Depression. People found ways to compensate them even when currency was unreliable, trading goods and services for medical care. Here's what gold critics miss. A skilled carpenter represents a valuable asset that cannot be stored in a vault. The skill exists in the person and can be deployed whenever needed. Gold sits in a safe producing nothing. Number 5. Selko's testimony reveals what actually traded in total collapse. When currency became worthless, certain items emerged as most valuable. Ammunition ranked highest because people needed it for hunting and self-defense, but Selko warned against trading it freely. Whatever you sell to another person in the way of a weapon may be used on you by that person the next day. Security considerations dominate all trading decisions in real collapse. Hygiene items held remarkable value. Bleach could purify hundreds of gallons of water, worth far more than its cost suggested. Bars of soap, toothpaste, feminine hygiene products commanded high prices. A bar of soap that cost 50 cents before the war traded for a dozen eggs during the siege. Medicine held extremely high value: antibiotics, pain relievers, first aid supplies. Many people died from lack of access to basic medications, but here's the revelation that changes everything. Selko recommends owning 1,000 Bic lighters rather than a fuel-powered generator. Let that sink in. A generator costs thousands. Why lighters? A generator makes noise, consumes fuel, requires maintenance, and attracts attention from those who might steal it. Lighters are silent, portable, distributed across multiple units, so losing some doesn't leave you without fire-starting capability, cheap to acquire now and can be refilled. Small, practical items addressing fundamental needs hold more reliable value than spectacular technological solutions vulnerable to theft or requiring scarce fuel. Selko had a large propane tank rigged to refill disposable Bic lighters. He traded filled lighters for food, candles, and other necessities. The insight is profound. A lighter provides fire for heating, cooking, and light. In a siege environment, these functions are non-negotiable. And here's what blows people's minds. Gold and jewellery held poor value during the crisis itself. Selko notes that warlords took precious metals from desperate people at can-of-soup value, Understanding metals would retain value once the crisis ended, but were worthless for immediate survival. Number 6. Venezuela provides real-time proof right now. This isn't historical theory. Venezuela's collapse is happening as we speak. One woman named Keila Ovals grows eggplant, tomato and passion fruit in her backyard, specifically for bartering, exchanging for pasta, sugar, milk or rice. She noted this lifestyle mirrors how her family lived in the early 20th century. Modern economic collapse reverts societies to pre-modern economic modes. A fisherman in Patanimo stated, "I haven't been to the city centre in almost 2 years. What would I do there? I don't have enough money to buy a shirt or a pair of shorts. I'm better off here swapping things to survive." Official currency became so useless that the effort to obtain it through wage labour wasn't worth the return. In Zimbabwe's parallel collapse, black market medicines exploded. Antibiotics, which cost dollars in stable countries, commanded black market prices multiples of their original cost. A dose of amoxicillin could be worth weeks of wages. Those who stockpile basic antibiotics, bandages, pain relievers, antiseptic materials hold extremely valuable assets relative to cost and storage requirements. Contrast this with precious metals. A person with a pound of silver couldn't use it to treat an infected wound, couldn't eat it, couldn't burn it for heat, but a bottle of antibiotics could literally be the difference between life and death. If you're realizing everything you thought you knew about economic security is wrong, hit that subscribe button. This channel is Financial Forensics. I perform autopsies on dead empires so you see the patterns before they repeat in your backyard. Drop a helicopter emoji if you're positioning yourself for what's coming, and tell me what you want me to dig into next. I read every single one. Number 7. Community networks are the overlooked asset that determines who survives. Meta-analytic studies across 148 studies with 308,849 participants found that individuals with stronger social relationships had a 50% increased likelihood of survival compared to those with weak social relationships. 50%. That effect size is comparable to quitting smoking and exceeds many established risk factors for mortality. Selko's account emphasizes this. He notes that almost all the trades were made in private arrangements after you got information about someone who had something that he wants to trade, and that the best situation was if you knew that person prior to the war, so you had already built trust from before. Trust-based relationships become economic infrastructure when formal systems collapse. One of you commented, "If Amish are community that share and help each others, community is one thing missing from many survival strategies." Exactly. Communities with established structures, neighbourhood organisations, churches, mutual aid networks, coordinate response, pool resources, and provide support far more effectively than isolated households. In Venezuela, communities informally organised food sharing and barter networks that help distribute scarce resources. In Bosnia, communities organised around trusted leaders to manage security, allocate resources, and coordinate survival strategies. For contemporary preparedness, this means developing relationships with neighbours, participating in community organisations, and building trust-based networks should rank as high as stockpiling supplies. Social capital is survival capital. Number 8. The comparative analysis destroys gold's claim as collapse insurance. Let me show you gold's fundamental problem as a collapse hedge. In the Bosnian siege, where the economic system collapsed most completely, gold held virtually no value during the crisis itself. The fundamental problem: gold produces no income and addresses no immediate survival need. Food feeds you. Tools allow you to produce and repair. Skills generate services people trade for. But gold is inedible, non-functional, and only valuable if someone else wants to trade for it. In early collapse phases, when people are desperate for food, tools, and medicine, gold is not what they want. In later phases, when civilization stabilizes around a new equilibrium, gold might regain value, but the person holding only gold while others hold productive assets will have suffered through the crisis without generating income or means of survival. During the 2008-2009 financial crisis, farmland increased in value by 17%, while the S&P 500 declined 46%, and gold initially declined before recovering. Farmland provided stable income returns throughout, rental value, crop sales, direct food production, regardless of what other assets did. Here's the brutal math. Farmland's average volatility from 1992 to 2020 was 6.84%. less than half the S&P 500's volatility of 16.9%, and notably lower than gold's volatility of 14.8%. During periods of high inflation, farmland returns averaged 14.7% annually, more than double the average inflation rate itself. Not theory, historical fact. So where are we seeing these signs right now? Venezuela, stage 5. Complete collapse. Barter economy, currency worthless. Turkey, stage 3 advancing. Official inflation understated. Gold accounts doubled as citizens flee the lira. Lebanon, stage 4. Banks froze accounts. Currency lost 98% of value in 18 months. And the elephant in the room, the United States. 38 trillion in debt. The Congressional Budget Office projects deficits will continue indefinitely. Interest payments on the debt now exceed defense spending. The Federal Reserve's balance sheet expanded by trillions since 2008. Central banks globally are buying gold at the fastest pace since 1996. More gold than US Treasuries for the first time. One of you commented, "My only bone to pick is this." This assumes that currencies collapse one at a time. I think we're looking at a general collapse of Western currencies within a couple of years. I agree. For the first time in civilized history, 100% of the world's currencies are fiat with none backed by gold or anything real. With global interdependency, the destruction of major currencies will likely happen simultaneously. Domino effect, systemic failure. So here's the question that actually matters. What do you do? The Amish Hedge is a diversified strategy combining 5 elements. Number 1. Acquire productive land if economically feasible. Even small-scale vegetable gardens provide meaningful food production capacity and develop skills. Communities in Venezuela adopted rooftop gardens and backyard food production as necessity drove adoption. Number 2. Develop practical skills targeting in-demand areas. Food production, gardening, animal husbandry, food preservation, repair skills, carpentry, plumbing, mechanical, medical knowledge, first aid, basic nursing. These skills cannot be stolen, degrade only through disuse, and remain valuable regardless of economic regime. Number 3. Accumulate practical goods with direct utility and long shelf lives. Medical supplies, tools, batteries, lighters, hygiene items, preserved foods. These maintain utility regardless of economic condition and become barter currency in collapse scenarios. Number 4. Build community networks explicitly and seriously. Participate in community organizations, build relationships with neighbors, establish communication networks, identify people with useful skills and resources. Number 5. Hold some precious metals for optionality after the crisis stabilizes, but only after you've secured the first 4 elements. Gold provides no value during the crisis itself. The evidence from multiple documented collapses, Bosnia, Venezuela, the Great Depression, recent US recessions, converges on a consistent conclusion. When monetary systems fail and institutional support collapses, survival depends on productive capacity, practical skills, and community networks. Not gold, not savings, not financial assets. The question isn't if. The question is whether you'll position yourself to survive when it does. If this forensic breakdown gave you a new lens, hit subscribe. This one was inspired by your comments on the last video demanding practical survival assets instead of financial theory. Drop a helicopter emoji if you're already positioning for what's coming, and tell me what you want me to dig into next. Some of you are already there. One comment. My grandparents survived the Great Depression because they had land and skills. Another. We've emptied our savings account completely and put everything into precious metals. That's a start, but make sure you're balanced across the 5 elements. The only question is whether you'll see it coming, or be standing in line wondering how bread costs 200 billion marks, while the person next to you trades a dozen eggs for a loaf because they own chickens. Now go diversify before you're forced to.